I used to take my paycheck and reward myself every single paycheck with something that I wanted to buy, whether it be at the mall or anywhere, going to a baseball game, right? Going out to a movie, eating dinner at a restaurant. Whatever I wanted to buy, I did. And what I noticed was I was constantly broke. A couple years later, fast forward in life, right? A couple years later, I started realizing that by employing things like minimalism and being frugal, that you could save up a lot of money in a pretty quick amount of time. It was not get rich quick, but it was kind of like get control of your finances pretty darn fast. Because I think you can do a lot in as little as 20 to 30 days of saving money. And when you start to save money, even in a little way, you start to gain what I like to call momentum. And before you know it, you have quite a bit of money saved. The only problem with that is sometimes people notice that they really enjoy saving money, which is a good thing. They also like to see the size of their bank accounts grow. But some people also stop and reflect and realize, am I punishing myself? Is there a punishment that one goes through when they're a minimalist or when they're frugal? Now, here's the interesting thing. As I started saving money, I went back to my first love, rewarding myself with a purchase. But once you start to get control of your finances and you start to see your money grow rather than disappear, you start to notice that even when you purchase something you want, you're able to do it without going on a binge. What do you mean, Jesse? Spit it out. Well, when I used to like to buy myself a pair of shoes, I would spend my last 60 or 70 bucks on that pair of shoes, and then I would wear that pair of shoes into the ground, and before I knew it, I was right back where I started. Once I started saving money, all of a sudden I could reward myself once a month by buying myself a pair of shoes. I talk about my shoes every now and again. It's not a special collection, it's a walking shoe collection. Basically, they're tennis shoes that we all grew up with, right? Adidas, Reebok, Nike. I'm just like you. I like all the brands. But unlike you, I don't necessarily buy a brand just so it can sit up on the shelf. I actually wear all of my shoes on my walks. It's part of my hobby. My walks also fed into my minimalism and frugality. What do you mean? Well, when you can start to enjoy going to the mall and walking around the mall without purchasing something, that's a win. When you can go and put your shoes on and walk through your neighborhood for an hour, not spend any money, the only thing you're burning is calories, that's a win. That also has some multiplicative effects. The more you walk, the more calories you burn. It is thought that you're actually adding longevity to the end of your life. So if walking helps me save money, helps me hit my financial goals, helps my mental well-being, and on top of it, I enjoy it enough to call it a hobby that might just increase my life by 5 to 10 to 15 years at the end of my life, I think that's a good thing. I really do. But I wasn't necessarily going to talk about the walk. Let's take it back to the money. Today I watched a YouTuber named Gabe Bolt. First time I've ever seen him. I might even be pronouncing his name wrong, and I'm sorry if I am. But the name of his video, guys, was called The Problem with Frugal Living That No One Talks About. He was saying in his case, what caused him to jump into a life of frugality was he wanted to survive. At one point, he didn't have very much money, and he didn't want to be one of these guys that was always broke. So he saw saving money as a form of survival for him. Once you stop buying junk and start saving money and you see your savings account grow, then all of a sudden you're saving still, but you're not necessarily saving in the name of survival. Hi. So survival was stage 1 for Greg, according to his video. Stage 2, now he's no longer broke. And by the way, the reason he started this was because he was worried that 43% of people would actually need to borrow money in order to come up with $1,000. And we've talked about that stat here before, that there's a lot of people in this country that barely have $400 or $500 if something were to happen, like an emergency were to pop up. What that means is that even your vehicle that you rely on to get you to and from work every day, you're one little breakdown on that vehicle from your life really going upside down. As he got control of his bills, Greg slowly started doing upgrades. Instead of living in a studio apartment, Greg all of a sudden got a nice 1-bedroom. Maybe he even got a 2-bedroom. Instead of a beater car, he went and got a newer car, right? Something he was able to afford. And pretty soon he was starting to live a life that was definitely a step up from just surviving. Now, Greg has a little money, but he can't get past this frugality, and I think this is a good thing, and I think Greg does too. But step 3 in his plan was to start investing in himself. He wanted to get some rental properties. When people are talking about rental properties, you know they're at a certain stage in life where they want some passive income to come in. So he was slowly but surely able to purchase a rental property. Now he's got some income coming in that he's not necessarily having to work for all the time. All of a sudden, he was able to focus more monies on his investments and what he wanted to do with regards to his own business, right? And all of a sudden, his life is going really in a nice direction. But here's the problem. The video wasn't about the good things that frugality comes with, right? Because otherwise, those are good things, the things I discussed. You conquer your bills, you slowly start to get to upgrade your life, and then you slowly start to invest in yourself and multiply your yield. But here was the thing he was saddened about. He looks like he's about my age, pushing 50. He might be a little older than me. He might be a little younger. But because of all the years that he was obsessed with making as much money as he could and spending as little as he could, he went on vacations. And when he was on vacations, he wouldn't go enjoy himself by going to the finest restaurants and going to the museums. You know, I don't know about you, but if I travel to France, I want to see the Eiffel Tower. I want to see the museums. I want to see where Napoleon walked, right? We see these places that we want to go, but he would actually go to these places and then not spend much money. And he felt like he kind of cheated himself. He wouldn't go on trips, period, in many cases, because he didn't want to spend the money. And every time he succeeded at making as much money as he could and spending as little money as he could, it didn't really fulfill him and feel good. In other words, when he was winning, it had no effect at all on how he felt. Yet if he bought himself a coffee and enjoyed himself with his money, he felt guilty. That's what happens with a lot of rich people. They tell themselves, I want to retire a millionaire someday. And then by the time they're old and they're officially a millionaire, they slowly realize that the things of the world that used to flip their boat, you know, like buying a nice car and going on ritzy trips and stuff, all of a sudden that's not as important. So it kind of brings up a question. Would you rather retire a millionaire so you can do whatever you want in your retirement? Or is it actually a better game plan to not necessarily retire with all that money, but to use that money during your good young years where it actually matters? If you're going to buy a sports car, it might be funner to buy that sports car in your 30s or 40s. If you're going to go on a killer vacation, right, where you're spending a ton of money, it might be more fun to do that in your 30s or 40s rather than your 60s or 70s. Now, these are things that are trivial, and for most of us, we don't think about them. But if you're living this life like Greg is and was, those are things you think about. How many times could I have purchased something more that I wanted? Here's the thing I noticed. Take a car, for example. There are some people, when they go inside their car, they are enamored by it. Everything from the dashboards to the details in the seat and the interior to the horses underneath the horses underneath the hood, right? There are people that are absolutely enthralled by their cars. They'll spend tens of thousands of dollars just working on their cars, right? Then there's other people like me that at one time I was enthralled by vehicles, like when I was 16, 17 years old. I wanted a really cool car. But after 30 years of driving, I've gotten to the point where when you're looking out the windshield, everything looks the same. So for me, I don't think there's ever going to be an age or amount of money that I can have where I'm just going to wake up and say, I want to go buy a sports car. I just don't think that's in me anymore. And I think that's what happens to minimalists and people that are frugal. You start to realize that I never needed to buy this excess junk in the first place. So even if you start saving money like crazy, it's not like you're going to wake up tomorrow and want to spend it. It's really weird. It's kind of like you're doing it for math. What do you mean? Well, people get depressed when their bank account's not a certain number of digits. Pretty soon you just care about getting as many digits into your bank account. To me, that looks like you're obsessed with the math of it all, the addition of all the numbers. And by the way, I went through something Greg went through. I've never purchased coffee in my life. I'm not a coffee drinker, but he was saying that even when he goes to Starbucks and gets one of these mocha latte chata drinks that you guys like, right? It would depress him from the standpoint of he's enjoying his drink, but the fact that he spent $7, $8, $9 on a glass full of liquid just didn't really sit well with him. Now I look at that and I say, Greg, if you're worth 6 or 7 figures and you're not hurting for money, just enjoy your drink. But at the same time, I know where he's coming from because I'm the guy that'll tell you when you go out to fast food, just get the burger and drink a water with it. Well, that's not very fun at all, is it? When you go to McDonald's or Whataburger, you want to get the meal with the large fry and the shake. So, again, it's one of those things where if I were to drop dead tomorrow, there would probably be a piece of me that would say, why didn't I just eat all that yummy, sugary food that I always wanted to? I was going to perish anyway. And I kind of think that's why people quit dieting and stuff. They kind of say to themselves internally, it is what it is. I might as well enjoy my life. And that's a way that I don't blame a person if they feel that way. My thinking is, though, I want to kind of teach you how to get into a walking routine and eat healthier so that you can live a long time. That's my goal. But if you don't want to live a long time, shit, eat the coconut cream pie. Who can blame you? What I'm more interested in is that we have black, white, and then all these different shades of gray in between. I used minimalism and frugalness to actually purchase all those things that I wanted. Everything I wanted, from a shoe collection to getting hand watches to getting a nice wardrobe, to buying a vehicle with cash, to having 2 vehicles, to having investments. All those things happened because I started saving money. So it was weird. It was like the more that I focused on savings, the more I was able to spend, right? But when you're spending, you never end up having enough to buy it. It's so weird. What does it matter if you spend it now or later? I don't know. But the way this simulation works, boys and girls, is if you're willing to live poor for a couple of years, you can really feel rich in just a couple of years. However, if you want to act like you're rich now, then unfortunately, the way the game works, you're always going to feel poor. It's kind of weird like that, but I'm telling you, I'm going to get a comment from Mala or Carla or somebody, and you guys are probably going to say, hey, Jesse, when I started saving my money in my 20s and 30s, all of a sudden those things that I once thought were impossible, all of a sudden I was purchasing my first and second car. All of a sudden I was putting a down payment on a house. But you have to be willing to sacrifice for years potentially. And that's where this comes in again. Do you really want to sacrifice these good years for the sake of tomorrow's years? It's so hot out here, 110 degrees. At Lynn Moss 2127 says, you're describing a mindset of scarcity. Once you're in that, it's really hard to shift to a mindset of abundance. Because keep in mind, what he was saying is every time he buys himself something, he feels guilty. At the same time, if he needs something, he's always got the money for it. So I agree with you. You don't want to pretend like every day is the worst day in the world and you can't spend money because you're going to be unemployed tomorrow. You don't want to live with that dread. It's just too much stress, right? But at the same time, God, if you make a game plan that you're going to be smart with your money and you're still going to find a way to enjoy your life, that sounds to me like a good darn game plan. You just got to figure out how to do it. Rebecca Trulock says, at age 66, I can tell you it's the material stuff I feel was wasted money, never the experiences with family and friends. In other words, don't go out and buy the third or fourth pair of jeans that you don't need, but still go out on vacations and get-togethers with family and friends, because in her opinion, those memories are worth spending money on and investing in, whereas sometimes those products are not. Okay, Rebecca, you're going to make the Mala Award for getting 2 back-to-back comments, because I thought this one was good too. Rebecca Trulock once again says, everyone needs balance. It's true you only live once. My husband died suddenly at the age of 50, so I'm glad that we went to concerts and traveled a little bit before he was no longer here. It's about balance. Rebecca, that's a great comment. Imagine one day you're looking at your husband, he's in his late 40s, and you're thinking, my goodness, I'm going to grow old with this man. I'm going to be with him for the next 30 or 40 years. And then imagine all of a sudden tomorrow comes, your husband's 50, and all of a sudden he's no longer with us. So again, yes, you want to save money, you want to make good choices, but you don't want to do it at the expense of having a horrible life. If you're doing it with a game plan, like I just said, of, hey, I'm going to live like shit for 2 years to get out of debt, then go for it. You've got a great plan. But a plan that says, I'm going to live the next 30 years and I'm going to have a horrible life where I don't turn on my air conditioning and, I don't spend any money and I collect cans from people's dumpsters, those things can be really depressing. Don't make goals like that. Even though there's nothing wrong if you want to go and collect cans out of dumpsters, that just sounds like a depressing plan. Thoughtsy Music says, I find it hard to distinguish between, hey, I've worked hard, I deserve this, and you're wasting money, bro. No one needs to spend money on this. Again, I kind of like that lady's comment earlier, Thoughtsy. Why not spend money when it comes to being with your friends and family? And why not choose to be a little bit cheaper when it comes to buying that third or fourth product that you don't really need? Micah, you and I were chatting the other day about buying stuff and then you set it in your closet and it just sits in there. Imagine if instead of buying that $100 box of nothing, imagine if you would have invested that into Coca-Cola or, Microsoft or whatever. That could have been an investment that grows. And it's all because for some reason we see these toys and just like little 5-year-old kids, we want it. But again, if you can get to the point where you don't always need that stuff, you're moving in the right direction. Tom Reichauer says, your frugality is much different than mine. I live frugally because I have to. I have very little income and no practical way of earning any more. But even though I'm hovering a little bit below the official poverty line, I don't cut out things that bring me joy, pleasure, and happiness. And that's the thing that's a bummer about frugality. Sometimes you tell people to quit spending so much darn money, and they actually do. And then because of inflation and the cost of everything going through the roof, even when they save, it's just impossible to make it work. If you're one of those folks that's your situation currently, let me know down below. But I'm going to let you know this one thing: don't give up. Keep going. At least you're trying. Eventually things will go your way. Put on your shoes, take an extra walk. It's hot where I live, but it's nice where you live. Keep going. We'll see you tomorrow.